Hi, I'm Dr.Marcia DiStaso. I'm the chair of the Public Relations Department at the University of Florida in the United States. I'm also the director of the Institute for Public Relations Digital Media Research Center and a past board member of the Global Alliance. While I run the academic public relations program at my university, I also run a research team where we look at how companies lead with purpose and take stands on social issues. Today, I'm excited to share my thoughts on post-pandemic public relations education. So, in our time together, I'll address impacts of the pandemic on students, faculty, and the profession with the hope of inspiring continued thought about the current and upcoming changes for all. I do have to warn you that while some wax nostalgic about the pre-COVID days and express desires to return to what they call normal, I don't believe higher education will ever return to what we were. Instead, I think that there were things that were not great before COVID and things that we have learned since that can help us to really be better. So I don't simply hope that we return to the way things were. All right, I'll start first by talking about the changes in format. Within days, educators around the world changed from teaching in-person classes to remote teaching. Before this, frankly, if I had asked my faculty to teach online, most probably would have said no. And those who agreed would have asked for, 6 months to prepare for the shift. Well, when COVID hit, in most cases, faculty had just days. What did this teach us? Well, it taught us we could do it, right? Not only did we use the technology and learn how to teach virtually and learn new technologies, right? But we have also found that this format actually works better for some students, some faculty, and even some topics. In fact, I just finished planning for our fall semester, and we expect the classrooms to be back to full capacity, and everyone who wants to be back on campus. But I have some faculty who have said that they want to teach online, and a good number of students who say that they want to take online classes. These are people that didn't want to do this pre-COVID, but now that they know how to do it, that's the means that they choose. And this means that the choices as educators that run universities, we have to figure out how to handle this, right? How to do things differently. What is our mix of online and in-person formats? We also have to think about online isn't just asynchronous learnings, but now we talk about ways to mix asynchronous and synchronous, utilizing those video connections and so much more than we ever would have expected pre-COVID. Thus, now we have so many more options available to us, right? Questions about modality also lead us to questions of quality, questions of scale, and questions of scope. But for example, now I'm wondering if we need to think about, should I just be hiring and employing professors who are in Gainesville, Florida, where I am? Or can I consider employing more faculty around the globe? This is an especially relevant question when we think about who the best person is to teach a course. What if the best person to teach a topic is at another university? Should only students that are at that university have access to learn from that professor? Or is there a way to expand beyond our individual campus borders? Plus, is there a way to better cover the formats of lectures and get better student engagement? Can we better provide recorded lectures and engage students with mini modules or labs and deepen their knowledge in the material? I don't know the answers, unfortunately, but I think many universities will be experimenting with ways to address these questions. Also, it's important to spend a minute to think about how COVID-19 both revealed and exacerbated structural inequalities within higher education. These inequalities include access to learning based on one's family resources and home environment. Not everyone has a quiet place to study and participate in class, or reliable internet, or a working laptop. When we were meeting in person, we only knew what the students and professors right in front of us chose to share about themselves. Now we know so much more about people. We're in their homes. We see how they live and what their environment is like. Thus, that great equalizer is no longer. Note how I commented on this impact on faculty and students. My students are now through video in my home. They see my dog, they see my kids. And when I teach, I have a boring wall behind me, not this kind of screen that I have right now, right? But a lot of students show much more, and faculty show much more about their living arrangements. And this impacts perceptions of all and impacts relationships. Plus, it removes the equality with expectations, right? Is it now fair to hold all students to the same expectations when one is at home receiving assistance from parents in an environment that's conducive to learning, while another one is maybe sleeping on someone's sofa or in a home with young children running around or in simply a high distraction environment? Is that fair and is that equivalent? Again, a lot of these questions I'm asking, I don't have answers to. It's things that I'm struggling with myself. But I hope that this presentation helps us all consider these important questions and help improve higher education. But now I want to talk a little bit about the learning platform, that format, how Zoom, platforms like Zoom that allow us to be in each other's homes, how that also impacts our perceptions. It makes everyone the same square. I don't know if you use Zoom, that's common for us in the US. So the same square, same size square, we're all equal. We're even placed on the same line as our students. And that removes the visual power distance that exists when the professor stands at the front of the classroom and the students sit in their desks, filed down rows in the classroom. How does this equal power distance now, how does that impact the teacher-student relationships? How does it impact the learning process? Does it improve it? Does it impede it? What are we dealing with that? I think those are great questions to consider. In companies, the equalization of management and employees has been found to humanize leadership. And that's important, especially during a pandemic, right? Compassion has been found to be such a critical element of today. But what does it mean in the classroom? So I think a good question to explore. Something else to consider is how this time has put a spotlight on the student need for social interaction. Really, social interaction is one of the big advantages of college campuses. The campus experience is an important part of being young today. It's really a benefit of going to college. The social interaction that happens before and after and even during a class has been missing. And it's likely to be strained for a while. This can hinder the development of such social skills, and we may see it impact business skills of recent graduates, especially when we consider brainstorming meetings and business pitches, among other activities. So really, these campus interactions are so important, and intra and extracurricular activities, they're all a big part of enhancing that student knowledge and that student college experience. Really, social learning or joint attention of shared experiences with with others, that draws a differentiator for the in-person versus the on-campus or off-campus college experience. Learners learn from one another. And as educators, I can tell you, I learn from my colleagues and my students all the time. And this isn't just from what's written and from what we see, but it's in the interactions with each other that we really learn so much more. So how this remote interaction is working or not working is something that we need to continue to explore. All right, so now shifting gears a bit, I'd like to talk a little about the impact that the pandemic has had on us internationally. The pandemic really has left no part of college education untouched, or college life really untouched. But for international students and study abroad programs, its impact has been especially far-reaching. The travel restrictions have hurt universities in so many ways. Two of the biggest are the drastic decrease in international enrollments and really the recruitment of international faculty. The decrease in international enrollments at many universities have certainly affected budgets, but a bigger concern, in my opinion, is the impact to the learning environment. Imagine sitting in a classroom where everyone looks like you. The richness of the conversation and the fascinating elements of uniqueness are lost. How can we effectively train communicators to operate in a global society if their education or training is limited to a country-specific viewpoint? I'm not sure. Colleges are now looking for new ways to give students an international experience. The pandemic pause has also allowed many universities the opportunity to consider how better to support our students from other parts of the world on our campuses. This became especially important when we realized that we had students that had no place to go. In the US, when the early response to COVID, many universities sent students home, but the international students were stuck, right? They couldn't go home for fear of not being able to come back or for fear of travel. So what were we to do? Well, universities found that we needed a better support structure for them. We needed to make them a priority. We needed to identify what their needs and concerns were. And I think that is something that we really should have done years ago. This shouldn't have taken a pandemic to pay attention to. However, it did, and now I think we're handling it much better and doing much better about all of our students. But this year, we also saw many students from outside of the US who were admitted to US universities enroll, but decide to do so from their home country. Again, that multiple reasons led to that, but for many, this meant learning on a different time zone. College is hard. Oh my goodness. Many students also work, and all of this can be challenging, but imagine doing it from across the globe. In communications, much of the curriculum that we have is team-based. Imagine trying to regularly coordinate team meetings with people in multiple time zones. Frankly, I see students having challenges when they're all in the same time zone, but adding a global element just increases the difficulty. So universities have a responsibility to do right by all students, and that means helping all students better adapt to the challenges in learning and collaborating across the globe. Really, the better we accomplish it here, the better these students will be as global communicators and global professionals. But the bottom line, having a global perspective will continue to be a critical piece of a 21st century college education. In a work world where crossing cultures and time zones are often the norms, college graduates, their ability to communicate and collaborate with colleagues from different backgrounds isn't just prized, it's expected. So we can help them do much better. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit from global to local. Universities that had strong community connections seem to come through the pandemic better, broadly speaking. This is especially true when considering connections to hospitals and healthcare workers. We saw this early on as medical professionals were needed to help explain what was happening, to now really rolling out the vaccine around the globe. But also, we see it impacting as things start to pick back up. One important element for college students is experience. As they seek to build what they have done and can do, working outside of their hometown is often a valuable experience. But due to travel limitations, many students are now seeking to gain experience closer to home. This gives them onboarding and growth experience while trying out the corporate culture without having to move. We as professionals need to keep this in mind as we're hiring new entry-level professionals. Their experience expectations will need to be possibly adjusted as we figure out how to fill in some of the components that they didn't have while they were working and gaining their experience versus the new hires of the past. We also see they're coming to us with very different skills. Their remote experience is top-notch, much better than entry-level professionals in the past. So there's a give and take there. But all right, let's focus on what we are teaching a little bit. The pandemic, oh my gosh, it's led to us better incorporating some topics. I would argue some of the hot topics of today are internal communications, change communication, healthcare communications, crisis communications, right? Just to name a few. But curriculum in universities are always developing and changing to reflect what we hope prepares our students for their future jobs. Of course, this is a bit of a moving target, but it's our responsibility to not simply focus on what worked in the past, but as educators, we should work to provide curriculum that prompts critical thinking, supported with important skills and relevant tactics. So, as I mentioned before, how we teach these topics will also need to change. This month, we had a special crisis class that we taught. The professor was the Chief Communications Officer at Southwest Airlines. This is a class that we love, coming from a leading professional at a big airline in the US. Well, this class met online for a week, and we pulled the students together for 1 hour each day to chat and communicate and talk about what they learned from the readings for the week and the videos that they had watched. Then on a Saturday, we met all day, 6 hours, to experience a crisis simulation. They collaborated in breakout rooms, and as they worked to represent their stakeholder groups in the simulation, they dug into the crisis and figured out how to get through this together. This was our third time teaching this class, so we thought it would be fine to just flip it online after having 2 successful in-person classes. Well, what did we learn? It worked. We were able to successfully move it online. Everything worked. The students were challenged, they learned. It was a great class. But the stress and urgency that we felt in the past when we were in person, it just wasn't there. And now we're talking about different ways to do this and what we learned from this experience. And in fact, the airline is also considering this a crisis test run. They see what worked and what didn't in this class as providing insight into challenges they might have in a real crisis. Clearly, this is something all companies should be thinking about. It's a little harder to feel that urgency when you're sitting at home in your own home or sitting in your own home, right? We can do this. We can figure out how to navigate this situation together, both the profession and academics. But finally, I would like to end by stating that I think now is a great time to be in public relations. I think that companies around the globe found that they need us. That spotlight of communicating with stakeholders shined bright. They need strong communications to all stakeholders, and many have learned that almost every aspect of business is stronger with us at the table. And This safeguards our field and provides what I believe will be fantastic careers for ourselves and for public relations students for years to come. Thank you. I'm happy to connect for any questions you have. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter.